All right. I appreciate everybody tuning in to this. We've had a long-standing relationship with the folks at AlphaTech. Couple quick introductions here. My name is Ross Brosmer. I'm the regional sales manager for the state of West Virginia and the rest of the Mid-Atlantic. I've been with Scale for over 9.5 years now, and took over the region about 8 years ago. So seen the organization grow into what it is today. I've also seen the partnership with AlphaTech grow since its inception. We have a very close relationship with them, and I'll go through a few reasons why AlphaTech combined with Scale's platform is a very unique and interesting partnership. We offer a very, very good solution alongside each other to end users and customers. So excited to go into that. Again, my name is Ross Brosmer. We also have Sean Walsh, who I will let Sean introduce himself as well. But again, appreciate everybody's time.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Walsh. I'm a systems engineer here in the Mid-Atlantic. I've been with Scale for a little over a year, and prior to joining the Scale team, I was a Scale customer for quite a few years. I'm excited to talk to you all today.
Thanks, Sean. All right, so I'm going to share, obviously I'm already sharing my screen, but I'm going to go through kind of our backstory, tell you guys who we are as a company, kind of give you some insight as to why Alpha is unique as a partner. And then we'll transition over to Sean, and Sean can share the user interface. He can share actually both of our user interfaces. There is our HyperCore user interface and there's Fleet Manager. So Sean can share that from a technical standpoint. So kind of kicking things off here, we'll start with a company background. Scale Computing, we started as a company in 2008. We've headquartered out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Okay, that's also where our support sits. That's important. We don't outsource any of our support. Customers working in conjunction with AlphaTech can really use both AlphaTech and Scale support to help augment their IT staff. Okay, so there's a lot of continuity there from account management. So from a customer standpoint, that means a swift resolution to any support issue. All right. So we headquartered out of Indianapolis, Indiana. That's actually where all of our founders are from. That's where I sit. So there again, there's some continuity from an account management standpoint. But back in 2008, we were a storage appliance. Okay, you fast forward to 2012, and that's when we launched our hyper-converged solution that we have coined platform. Okay, and what our founders wanted to build was essentially a private cloud solution. Okay, it sits on-prem. We sell it as an appliance. Okay, we sit on commodity hardware, but customers don't have to worry about the hardware. Okay, they can really focus on the application side of things. The cluster's self-aware, it's self-healing. Okay, so our founders built a solution that integrates servers, storage, and virtualization into a 3-node cluster for production. Okay, we've also eliminated the need for VMware, which, as I'm sure most are aware, there's a lot influx with VMware. Okay, with the acquisition of Broadcom, it's really accelerated the need for the mid-market and the SMB, which is what we focus on. It's accelerated those customers to look for VMware alternatives or, in general, third-party hypervisor alternatives. Okay, and we include that into our cost. Customers aren't paying a premium for any of our features, the main one being the hypervisor. It's all included in our platform. Okay, so what we're doing here at production, again, is we're integrating server, storage, and virtualization. But as time has gone on, we've expanded our feature set. Okay, we've built strong OEM relationships within the market, and it's really broadened our ecosystem and it's further allowed customers to purchase their infrastructure as a true one-stop shop. Okay, so we have built-in replication, so disaster recovery is included in our platform. We have an OEM relationship with Acronis, so backup is also included in our platform. We sell and support Acronis. Okay, we also have a VDI solution in which we sell and support. Okay, so it's really a true one-stop shop, and not only does our feature set combined with our OEM relationships in the market, and also our ability to sit on a number of different hardware footprints allow for that one-stop shop, but it also allows a lot of flexibility with how customers can utilize our solution. Typically, what customers are going to do is they're going to migrate their production workloads into a 3-node Scale cluster. Okay, top left, core data center. All right, And that 3-node cluster, we'll go into that here in just a second on another slide, but that 3-node cluster can be upwards of 10,000 configurations, okay? We optimize rollouts and configurations from both the performance and a financial standpoint, all right? So typically, core data center is going to be our bread and butter. Now, if you look diagonally, a lot of times backup and disaster recovery is going to be included in a transaction because we've not only simplified that, but we've also made it affordable. And this is really where AlphaTech comes into play very nicely, and is a reason why they're a unique and productive partner, because they're able to act as a site for a customer's disaster recovery or even their production environment, right? They do hosting, they do disaster recovery and backup at their data center alongside Scale. Okay, so AlphaTech offers a lot of flexibility with regards to both production, backup, and disaster recovery. Now, I mentioned also, if you look bottom left, we do handle VDI and also video surveillance. Okay, VDI, it really comes down to the amount of users and the resource utilization pertaining to those users. Camera video surveillance is very, very similar. It comes down to the amount of cameras and the resource utilization that comes with those cameras as well, what type of cameras, things of that sort. We act as the storage for video, okay? After that, the next objective there is to figure out what VMS vendor you would like to work with, okay? There's dedicated pricing for video surveillance that is really just dedicated for that, right? Video storage, all right? Now, if you look at the top right here, these skeleton images that my cursor is circling, these are what we call our HE100s, okay? You know, we go on very, very large hardware footprints, but we also go on very, very small. So these HE100s, they can act as standalone, but if you cluster them together for high availability at a particular site, they're about as tall as a Coke can, okay? Not saying this is going to be used for your typical production environment. The reason I like to point these out is because it speaks volumes towards the efficiency of our platform, okay? We're highly efficient within the I/O path, meaning we don't require as many resources to manage the hardware. And that means a few different things that I can go into, but mainly it allows us to go on these very, very small hardware footprints, which, if you can't tell, these are the NUCs, okay? Formerly the Intel NUCs, taken over by simply NUCs. These oftentimes are going to be used for smaller remote office, branch offices, distributed enterprise, okay? Or edge deployments, which we consider edge, any critical application that sits outside of the core data center. Edge is a broad term. It can be, you know, a customer having 5 sites, 3 sites, or 1,000 sites, okay? And what these HE100s do is they offer affordable, high availability at each site. Say a gas station has a point of sale application across, you know, 1,000 sites. They're able to use these HE100s as a standalone, a single node, or cluster them together for high availability. Next thing you know, you have them across, you know, say 1,000 sites. You get not only disaster recovery, so if a site goes down, you're able to spin that up elsewhere, but it also offers business continuity, okay? So if that application goes down and you don't have a site to spin that up at, you're losing money, okay? What we offer here is the ability to spin that up, and we offer business continuity, okay? So a lot of flexibility here. And if I transition over, this slide here really outlines our backup and DR strategies as seen at the top. And we handle, let's start with disaster recovery. Okay, disaster recovery is if a customer wants to spin their applications up in a production manner should their production site go down. Okay, backup is for recovery. All right, recovering files. If you get hit by something like ransomware, God forbid, you know, so we'll start with disaster recovery, and we handle DR a multitude of ways. You know, let's say site 1 is your production site, okay? 3-node cluster there. The most common way that customers are going to plan out disaster recovery is likely to use a single node, okay? And I'll preface going any further by mentioning disaster recovery is number 1, it's what budget allows, okay? It's an insurance policy. After that, the next piece of criteria is what type of performance do you want in the event of disaster? Okay, and that helps us fine-tune a disaster recovery configuration for your environment. You know, and I mentioned the single node is the most common way for customers to plan out DR. That single node can be an all-spinning disk. If a all-spinning disk node, if a customer just wants to be able to limp along and fail over a handful of their critical applications, they can do that. We have a hybrid node as well. It's a 12 drive systems with 3 NVMe drives and 9 spinners if they want that performance. We also have all NVMe if you want an immense amount of performance in the event of a failover. Customers can also use another 3 node cluster if they want, right? If they've got essentially site 1 is production and site 2 might be another production site, what we'll do there typically is we'll build light configurations at each site. So in the event if one site goes down, they can fail over to get similar performance at each site. Okay. Now transitioning to backup real quick. I'll mention we are backup agnostic, right? If you have a backup vendor that you like to use, you can continue to do so. But with Acronis, there's value. There's value in the Acronis piece. Again, we sell and support Acronis. It is sold as a software license and it's sold per node. Okay. The second piece there is figuring out the target. Okay, that customers will be sending their backups to, and Acronis offers flexibility with that. You can send backups to 5 targets simultaneously to get the level of protection that you want. You can send backups to a bare metal appliance or another storage device. If you have a storage device, laying around or another server, you can use that as a target. You can use a cloud vendor of your choosing. Okay, some customers will use something like Wasabi or whatever cloud vendor you want to use. You can use that for backup storage. If you want it on Scale's platform, we have what we call a business resilience system. It's called a BRS node for short. That can sit locally, it can sit off-site as well. And what we do when we build that configuration is we typically pack it full of an abundance of all spinning disk storage for backups, okay? We minimize the amount of CPUs and RAM that's needed because really it's just gonna be used for archival. You're not going to be spinning them up, but there's dedicated pricing for these nodes. And again, they're typically going to be very storage heavy nodes. Okay. So keep in mind too, I have Alpha's logo here. Alpha can host your disaster recovery node if you don't have any other sites or you don't want to manage another DR site. Alpha can handle that. What some customers will do is they'll have the DR nodes sitting at their site and they will have Alpha host their production environment. There's a lot of flexibility there depending on how you guys want to plan it out. All right. So that kind of goes through our backup and DR strategies. There's more to it, but Sean and I are mainly Sean is pretty good at building a disaster recovery solution that will fit your needs. Okay. This here, I won't stay on this slide too often. This here outlines some deployment options, right? We're very flexible with how customers can deploy us. At a production site, it's always going to be 3 nodes, right? We want that true high availability. After that, if you've got remote sites, you can use single nodes. It doesn't have to be those HE100s. It can be, an all spinning disk node. It can be an all NVMe node. It can be a hybrid node sitting at your remote sites, okay? And you'll see at the bottom, all of this is managed from one web-based console, okay? There are 2 UIs that we can leverage here. Again, and I mentioned it earlier, there's Fleet Manager, okay? If you have, let's say, 5 to 1,000 sites, you would find value in the Fleet Manager. And then we have our HyperCore UI, which has always been our bread and butter. That's going to be a singular site user interface. It also has your built-in replication. There's a remote clusters tab that Sean will go through as well. So a lot of flexibility with how customers can deploy us, right? Again, at the central data center, we're going to want 3 nodes. And then after that, you can use single nodes, okay? All right, this slide, and then I think this should wrap it up, and I'll toss it over to Sean. This here outlines our wide array of configurations, okay? I like to talk through the sizing process here because it's an interactive process that we work alongside AlphaTech and our customers, okay? There are 10,000 configurations that we can use. So that's one of the reasons we like to keep it interactive. What we typically will do is we'll run a sizing utility. We have access to a live optics, okay? The team at AlphaTech is also very familiar with this. Sean typically sends over the instructions to kick that off. It runs for 24 hours or however long you want to run it. And it gives us really good performance metrics. It's non-invasive. You won't even know that it's running, but it's the old Dell DPAC, but it gives us performance metrics such as resource utilization from a storage, RAM, CPU standpoint. It gives us IOPS, gives us network throughput and workload concentration, things of that sort. And we'll take that report and we'll build about 2 or 3 recommended configurations for production and maybe about 1 or 2 for disaster recovery, okay? And And there's a lot of flexibility when we build these. And again, we keep it interactive. So if you want option 2 storage amount with option 3 CPUs or vice versa, we can accommodate that. Okay. And once we build those configs, we'll hop on a review call to go through the live optics, go through those recommended configurations, and try to hone in on one particular configuration. Okay. I always tell customers there's 2 ways to purchase Scale. The first way is to say you know your expected growth rate over a 5-year period. Well, we'll go ahead and build a configuration that's going to accommodate that growth or lack thereof, right? The second way to purchase Scale is to, pun intended, incrementally scale your environment as your organizational needs continue to grow. One of the things that separates us from the competition is our ability to also mix and match nodes. So from a customer's perspective, what that means is you're able to leverage Moore's law as new components hit the industry and in turn hit our chassis, you're able to add those nodes in. Okay, so say a customer experiences unexpected growth in year 2 or 3. They're able to add in a node that might be a little bit different from the original 3. Okay, so if they need a node with higher end CPUs with faster clock speeds, they can add that in. If they need a node with more storage performance or more storage capacity, they can add that in as well. Okay, if you just need RAM, you can perform a field memory upgrade. So when a customer comes to us and says, hey, we need, let's say X amount of resources because we're onboarding an additional application, we always say, hold on, there's likely a way we can optimize this node add. So if you need more SSD or more flash, we can add in a node with more storage performance. So there's a lot of flexibility there, and we can really go through the pros and cons of each configuration as we go through that review call. Okay, we go all the way down to the HE100s. We go all the way up to very high performing, high capacity HE5000 nodes as well. All right, all NVMe hybrid models. There's a lot of different configs that we can use. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Sean, and Sean can go through the UI.
All right, thank you, Ross. All right, this here is our Fleet Manager user interface. It's the first of its kind cloud management platform to really get that 5,000-foot view of everything going on in your environment. So when you first log in, you're going to see you have the health status of all of the clusters here within your environment. In this particular tenant, we have 28 systems. So you can see their health statuses across the board. We also can see the version information, so the firmware version that all of these nodes are on. And then under there, you can see any current conditions that are triggered by our system here that needs your attention. Whether it's a critical, a warning, an informational thing, you can go into here and you can search by particular severities. So all your warnings, you can search by individual clusters. You can search by any of those that can really help tailor what you're looking at so you can keep track of everything in your environment. When we jump over to our clusters tab here, this gives us a breakdown of all of the clusters we have in the environment, their health status, how many nodes, how many VMs are running out of how many you have resources provisioned to, any tags that you have set that help with, filtering and organizational needs, some resource metrics, and the firmware version, of course. One thing I want to highlight here is we can also kick our updates off from here. Our updates are non-interruptible to your workloads, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when I jump into the HyperCore UI. But just know that you can kick this off from the cloud remotely without having to go on site, without having to jump into the HyperCore user interface. You may notice here that we have deployed and staged. So we also have a ZTP, zero touch provisioning, which allows you to send additional nodes or a cluster offsite and provision it from within Fleet Manager without having to send your staff or your resources there. So we have this add cluster button to be able to do that. And from there, you can see any one of these that you would have staged. It'll say that it's waiting for the nodes to come online. All you have to do is plug that into power, get internet connectivity to it, and you can provision it right from here. So a really quick, easy way to deploy our platform. Jumping into one of these clusters, you get a little bit more information about the nodes. You'll get the IP address, the drives, the CPU, the cores, the makeup of that node, as well as some resource metrics for that node. And you can also see if you have a support tunnel open with us. I'll show you that again in a little bit. Down here, you can see all of the virtual machines that you have and their state and some resource metrics and details that you can analyze here to keep track of what's in your environment. Something to note is we do have a feature called Secure Link where you can go directly to the cluster right from the Fleet Manager without the need of a VPN. This creates an encrypted tunnel down to that cluster. So you click on this and you'll be presented with the login for your HyperCore user interface. Additionally, if you have permissions to that HyperCore user interface for that particular cluster, you could also jump right into the virtual machine console window right here from Fleet Manager. So a lot of great features that help you manage and see what's going on within your environment from that 5,000-foot view. Additionally, here we have a node view where you'll see all of the nodes, all of their states, their serial numbers, etc., all from here. This is an aggregate view of all of those nodes. And then we also have an aggregate view of all of the virtual machines. Same thing that you would see on an individual cluster, except these are all of the virtual machines throughout your entire environment. Of course, we have the ability to create users here. So we have a bunch of different permissions that you can utilize to change the way that people can access the system. And that's Fleet Manager. Now I'm going to jump over to our HyperCore user interface here. This is where you're really going to do the bulk of your work, right? You can connect to this user interface by any of the IP addresses of any of the nodes in your cluster, and then you're going to get this same user interface here. Up in the top left here, we have the name of your cluster and the firmware version that you're on. If there is an update available, you'll see update available right here. The reason I bring that up is any features, any security patches, anything that comes with down from us as an update is included at no additional cost in our licensing. So if there is an update, you might want to check it out and see if you want to update to the latest and greatest version. In the middle here, we have some resource gauges. These show you the resource utilization of your entire cluster. So your CPU, your RAM, your disk, your IOPS, and your network latency. If we jump into our disk view here, you can get a view of the utilization of your storage. So you can take a look at how much your snapshots are using and how much your VM data is using. You can see the efficiency of our platform. It's important to note that we do deduplicate data, so we're not recreating those data blocks on the actual physical device. So if you have a bunch of Windows VMs, you're not recreating those system files over and over and over. And this allows us to be more efficient on our storage layer, and it gives more resources back to you for your workloads. Under our provision tab, you can see that we do thin provision our virtual machines. And you could see that if all of that provisioning were to fill up, you would be over provisioned by quite a bit. So this just gives you that view so you can see where your storage is at. On the top right here, we have any conditions that may be set. So similarly to what you see in Fleet Manager, any warnings, criticals, informational things that need to be brought to your attention, you will see them here. When you would click on it, it will take us over to our control center under conditions and give us a breakdown of what's going on, the time, the severity, the node, and the description. And you can use that information to troubleshoot the problem yourself, or you could hand it off to our support team and they'll troubleshoot it for you. Under here, we have a RAM view. This shows how your memory is allocated to each of those virtual machines across the nodes. You can see that this is a 3-node cluster represented by the 3 boxes. And then you can see the breakdown of where your memory allocation is for those virtual machines. If we go to our disk view here, you can see how your data blocks are stored. So this particular solution, this cluster is a tiered solution. We have 1 SSD and 3 spinning disks per node, and you can see where those data blocks live. As you can see, our SSD has a little bit more than our spinning disk. Our SSD doesn't act like a caching drive. It is a true tier. So your data blocks are going to commit on that SSD and live there and then get managed by our block engine called Scribe. Scribe stands for Scale Computing Reliable Independent Block Engine, and that manages where those hot and cold data blocks go. So as those data blocks get colder, you're not accessing them as much. It will move them off to the higher capacity spinning disk for you. And then as you start to utilize that system, it will move it back to the SSD, so you always have that performance out front. Going down here under these cards all represent your virtual machine. So our nice colorful ones are the ones that are powered on, and our grayed out ones are the ones that are powered off. On the card itself, you have the name of the virtual machine, a description that you set, the IP address, any tags that you have set that help with bulk operations and filtering through here. You could do some bulk operations like snapshotting them based all on a tag or a name, or maybe the particular node that they live on, or you can clone them. So it really helps with that bulk operation. Some additional things on the card, we have resource gauges for that particular VM, so you can get an idea of what that virtual machine is doing. We also have a nice interactive console window here. So any management tasks that you need to do, installation processes, etc. Looks like my VPN's not too happy today with me. Come back to that in a second. But some other things on here, we have the ability to edit the virtual machine. So we can change the name, the descriptions, etc. We have the ability to live migrate the virtual machine between nodes. If you have the need to move it for a particular reason, you can. You can delete the virtual machine if you have permissions to do so and the virtual machine is powered off. You have the ability to clone the virtual machine as it sits right here, right now. And you also have the ability to snapshot the virtual machine as it sits right here, right now. Actually, I think my VPN just started to connect. It did not. Let's see. Okay, we'll come back to it. So there's a couple different ways to create virtual machines. I'm going to show you the long way first, just to show you how easy it is to get up and running from scratch. So we go up here to our Create VM button, and we'll get this nice window to create the VM. So we'll give it a name. Let's call it Sean Test for argument. Give it a description. We'll say, well, maybe it's a database. Tags, the first tag you set will group it logically amongst the virtual machine, or amongst the tabs here, amongst the virtual machines. So it really keeps them organized. And then anything you set after that, again, just really helps with that bulk operations and that filtering to keep yourself organized. We pick our operating system, so Windows or other. If we got Linux, Unix, etc., you could pick other. Drivers, you're going to pick performance or compatible. Most cases, you're going to pick performance unless you're running a legacy system, something that requires some compatibility drivers. We leave them in there for you if you need them. Under our boot type, we have BIOS, we have UEFI, and we have UEFI with the Virtual Trusted Platform module. The Virtual Trusted Platform module is experimental in this version right now, but in our next version, it will be that experimental tag will be removed and it will be fully featured. So if you're looking to leverage VM level encryption like BitLocker or Lux on Linux, you can definitely do that, and it helps that ease of management with that platform. You pick your CPUs, so we'll leave that at 2 for argument. Pick our memory. We got a 100 gig drive, and let's add a terabyte here. We pick our media to boot from, so I'm going to pick my server ISO and hit create. You're going to see down here a couple of messages. It's queued. Now it's running, so it's allocating those resources to that virtual machine, and now it's ready to go. So now I have a whole nother card that I could power on, and in a couple seconds, I'll have that nice Windows install screen we're all familiar with. So that's the long way to get started with a virtual machine. Some other ways is you can create templates. So what my colleagues did here was they did the exact same process I did, but then they went through, they installed the operating system, they created that default administrator account, they ran the Windows update, and then they powered that virtual machine off. So now I can come into here, clone this virtual machine, change my name, my description, I'll change my tag so it's ordered properly with my virtual machines. I can generate a new MAC address or clone an existing, and I can resize the drive. I hit clone, and now I have a virtual machine ready to go from that template. So if you're creating a lot of virtual machines, this might be the way to go for you. All right, let's jump into some settings here. So under this view here, we can see our boot type, our CPU core allocation, and our memory allocation. We can see any media that we have attached, any installation, ISOs, anything like that. We can see our block devices and our network adapters. We have the ability to add new block devices, new network interface cards, and change our boot order if we feel the need to do so. I'm going to jump into the block device information window here because I think there's some pretty neat things to point out. First and foremost, I really like that you can see the mount point for this particular block device. It really helps with that management when you get into the nuts and bolts of things from an administrator side. You can see when it was created, how much storage is allocated to it. You can expand the drive. But the one thing I really want to highlight here is this heat priority. So heat stands for Hypercore Enhanced Automated Tiering. And that goes back to where I was talking about our SSDs and our spinning disks working as a true tier together. So by default, the data blocks come in on that SSD, live there until they get colder, and then it moves them off. That's automatic and you don't have to touch it. But if you have an IOPS intensive workload and you want to get a little bit more performance out of it, well, maybe we bump this number up to extreme, absurd, hyperspeed, ludicrous speed, or these go to 11 if you get the movie references. If we set this to an 11, your data blocks are going to be prioritized on that SSD until a point that it would potentially jeopardize your high availability. And then our block engine will start to move the coldest of those blocks off to the spinning disk. If you have archive storage and maybe you're not accessing it all that much, but you still need it on your cluster, well, you can maybe turn this down to very low or minimum or off, and then those data blocks will be prioritized more on the spinning disk, leaving that SSD available for your more workload intensive workloads. Under our network device info here, I do like to point out that we can set VLANs. So if you're segmenting your traffic, you can set these here so that it'll tag the traffic accordingly for your networking purposes. All right, so now I'm going to jump into our data protection suite. This is our snapshotting feature. Think foundational backups, right? You can take 5,000 snapshots per virtual machine and have them on here for up to the life of the cluster. If we click into this, you can see that I have a bunch of snapshots here. We have a couple one-off snapshots. I have it also on a daily schedule. If I go here, you can see that we only save the differential data between the snapshots. So again, staying resource efficient in the resources that we have so that your workloads can perform with all of the resources available. We have the ability to clone out one of these snapshots and create a new virtual machine, and we can also delete the snapshot, again, if you have permissions to do so. These snapshots are immutable from the operating system, so you have that inherent protection from ransomware and malware, which is really great. If we jump into this, not only can you clone that virtual machine and create a new one from a snapshot, but you can also clone the block device. So say you had a ransomware attack and it completely hosed my F drive here, for example. Well, I can go into my snapshot, a good snapshot, and mount that back to that virtual machine or any of the virtual machines that I have on the cluster here. So if you weren't sure it was the right copy, it might still be actively infected. You can mount that snapshot or that block device to another virtual machine that maybe has no network adapter, right? Jump into the console window, verify that it's the right copy, the integrity of the data is there, and then mount that back into production for yourself. The recovery time on that's a matter of you just finding the right copy and mounting it back in. So a really quick way to get up and running when and if disaster strikes. You can see here that I have the last time that my snapshot was taken. So my last daily snapshot was taken at 2:22 a.m. You can set these on a schedule, like I have a daily one here, and I'll show you where we can create those in a little bit. The big thing here is we can also replicate these snapshots out to a remote site. So if you have a secondary location, if you have a node or a cluster sitting in Alphatec's data center, you can replicate your snapshots out there so they're safekeeping in the event of a disaster. So for example, my virtual machine here is being replicated out to our US Goose cluster. And if I click on this and get through my security window here, same user interface, but this one you can tell that it's only a single node. So this is living out in a completely different data center down the street from our other data center. And if I scroll all the way down here, here's all of my snapshots under my Walsh tag. So if I go in here, here's all my snapshots, same rules apply. I can clone this snapshot and create a new virtual machine from it. I can also clone out the block device and attach it to any of the virtual machines that are running here. And it's important to note that this replication for the snapshots can be bidirectional, right? So if you have a workload running on here, I think my colleagues have some on here, you can replicate them back the other way as well. So it allows a lot of different ways about keeping business continuity, right? So let's go back to our original cluster. So now I'm going to jump into our control center and I'll show you a little of the nuts and bolts of how everything works. So first and foremost, we have a cluster log, so you can keep track of and audit everything that's going on within your environment. The conditions tab we spoke about a little bit before. Our control would be to shut it down, which you probably don't want to do. Our media tab, this is where you're going to upload your ISOs, your installation media, etc. One thing to highlight here is you can also upload your virtual disk. So if you're migrating to Scale, we have a bunch of tools available for you that makes that process very easy. We have SC Move. It's made by Carbonite, now OpenText. And what that does is it will replicate your data blocks from a source, whether that source is physical, virtual, in the cloud, and it will replicate that virtual machine out to your destination on Scale. And it will replicate those data blocks, the differential data, through a period of time to make sure it's staying up to pace with your workloads. When you have a maintenance window, you initiate the cutover, it powers it off on the source, powers it up on the destination, and you're moved to Scale. Super easy. But additionally, you can come into here and upload virtual disks. So you can upload it from any other platform, Hyper-V, VMware, whatever it may be, upload it into here and attach it to your virtual machine, and you're migrated to Scale. So very easy way to get up and running. Under our remote clusters tab, my colleagues are doing some work on the cluster today. Under the remote clusters tab, this gives you the view of all of the remote clusters that you have configured. So again, if you had a node or a cluster sitting in Alphatec's data center, you would see it here, as well as its cluster gauges and any conditions that are set. This helps you make an informed decision about where you're sending your snapshots before you send them out there. So I do really like this view. Remote support. So as Ross mentioned, our support lives in Indianapolis 24/7, 365. You can call us, you can email us, you can hit this nice little support chat button up here in the top right, and you're going to get one of our support engineers on the line. They're going to give you like a 4 or 5 digit code that you can punch into one of these available nodes and hit open connection. That creates an encrypted tunnel out to that engineer. So there's no more having to use third-party tools to get a vendor connected and then wiggling your mouse every 15 minutes to stay connected. You could just open that tunnel. They can hop in, they could check it out, they can augment your IT support, they can go over best practices. We have a lot of services available to you that can really help you out in your environment. Once they're done, you hit close connection, and then they can no longer connect to your cluster. Under our schedules, this is our snapshotting schedule. So I'm going to show this one as an example. This business critical, I think, is a very good explanation. So we can take snapshot frequencies on a minutely, hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly schedule, right? Whatever your RPO and your RTO needs are, whatever your policies dictate, we can match that here. And you can create them for different virtual machines on different schedules, whatever you need. One thing I like to highlight here is we do have different retention periods that we can set. So like my colleagues here have 8 hours of hourlies being saved on this cluster locally, and then 1 day of hourlies being sent out to that remote cluster. So you have a lot of flexibility to meet your RPO and your RTO demands and make sure that you're staying compliant within your policies. Under our settings tab, I like to highlight that we can leverage an OpenID Connect provider. So if you're using multi-factor authentication or a third-party provider for that, you can configure it in here. We also have the ability to ship off logs to a syslog server. So those cluster logs I showed you a few seconds ago, if you need to manage that and audit that, you can send that out to a remote syslog server. And we also have the ability to send email alerts, which I highly recommend. That way, when any of these conditions are triggered, you're the first to know that you need to check something out. Under our update tab, if there were a firmware update available, you would see it here. It'll give you a little bit of a description on what the version is and some information. There'll be a link there that takes you to the release notes that you can read through. And again, if you're just not quite sure, you can always reach out to our support team and they can shed some light on it as well. But you would kick this update off, and it is non-interruptible to your workload, like I mentioned earlier. So the way this will work is it will live migrate the virtual machines off of your first node, balance them out on the remaining 2 nodes, power that node down, patch it, bring it back up, and when our Autonomous Infrastructure Management Engine, also known as AIM, determines that that node is healthy and can manage your workloads again, it will rebalance and then continue that process for all the additional nodes. So again, while this is going on, your users are none the wiser that this is happening. In fact, when I was a Scale customer, we used to kick them off on a Tuesday over lunch because we were already there and it saved us from having to come in on a Sunday and do patching. So really great there. And again, if you're unsure about it, you can always reach out to our team. User management. So of course we have the ability to create users here. We have a couple different roles. We have read-only as it sounds, read-only. We have admin, which is full access, and then we have customize. So if you have like a junior admin on your team and you don't want them to be able to change cluster settings or shut the cluster down, but you got to make sure your backups are working. You got to make sure they can create and edit VMs. Maybe they can delete them and manage some power controls. You can set that granularity in here to meet your needs. And then finally, I'm going to touch on this. We do have a well-documented REST API. So if you're looking to do some advanced functionality, you could read through our API and see how that works. Like Ross mentioned, Acronis uses our API to work natively with our platform. If you want to work on some advanced functionalities, this might be your place. We have a bunch of Ansible playbooks if you're into deploying and automation and some patching and that kind of thing. You could definitely work through some of those playbooks to get some more advanced functionality out of our platform. And that's my overview of our 2 HyperCore user interfaces. I thank you very much for taking the time and watching this video.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. And again, thank you to AlphaTech, and especially thank you to all of our customers and everybody that tuned into this. You know, I'd look forward to hearing from everybody. If you ever want to get in touch with us, AlphaTech can always put you in touch. You know, happy to make ourselves available for any personalized discussions. But thanks for everyone. We will be in touch. Thanks, guys.